Sam,
We're ready. Yes, sir.
Ms. Thomas, good to go. Hello, I call the June 3rd, 2024 Charlottesville City Council meeting to order. Ms. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Oshrin?
Here.
Councilor Payne?
Here.
Vice Mayor Pinkston?
Here.
Councilor Snook?
Here.
Mayor Wade?
Here. Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
Move for approval of the agenda.
Second.
Natalie, did you want to pull something or?
Well, I didn't, I mean, I approve, I'm fine with the proposal as it is, but I didn't know if this was a good time to talk about it. Or is this something we send to staff and we get some feedback on?
The feedback that I received is that some matters the ship may have sailed, so if there's discussion you want to have, we probably should pull it and let you express that.
Okay.
And then get clarity on what is available for discussion, but
Okay.
we will have someone here.
Okay, then let's
for
do
the
that, that'd be
conversation.
great.
Okay.
Please.
So, yeah.
The sidewalk waiver for the MECA project?
Okay. So Keena, did you get that?
So maybe I move for approval of the agenda as amended such that item 7 of the consent agenda comes into the action items.
Now becomes 22
Now becomes 22.
effectively.
Thanks.
Okay, and it's been moving properly second. Can you please cast your vote? Okay. All right, and the motion passes. This meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first will be a work session where we are here and discuss presentations that do not require a council vote, and then we'll go into closed session. And then at 6:30, we'll have our regular business meeting. And the first report that we have is the Human Rights Commission annual report. Todd?
Thanks so much. We're going to position this so we can maybe both talk at it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Mhm.
Great. Oh, we gotta make it clicker.
Also,
we use this,
both of
right?
those microphones should work if you each do want your own.
Oh, we can do that.
Oh.
You separate us.
Oh, so-
I don't want to get in the way of the dynamic duo, but
I'm a little worried here.
Okay.
just a heads up.
Thank you all for welcoming us here this evening. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Ernest Chambers. I am the chair of the Human Rights Commission.
And I'm Todd Niemeyer, Director of the Human Rights Commission, and we're going to present to you our 2023 annual report. We'll kind of tag team some of these things, but we'll go back and forth, keep it interesting. So the contents of this report, we're going to talk a little bit about the roles of the commission in the office, some of the key takeaways from our calendar year 2023. We report on the calendar year. I think we've always done it that way. I know that's never a good reason for things, but to be honest, it's been set up that way because we typically hold our elections for officers in the commission in January, and new commissioners are appointed in March, so we typically follow the calendar year. So that's why that's set up that way. We'll also bring to you some conclusions from 2023 and a little bit of what's going on in 2024 to give you updates. So a little bit about the structure of the two bodies. So we have a Charlottesville Human Rights Ordinance that basically created the Human Rights Commission and the Office of Human Rights back in 2013. The difference between the two bodies, obviously the commission is one that you appoint, 9 volunteer community members. They address systemic issues, they work with our office to do community outreach, and they advise you all on human and civil rights issues. The office provides support to the Human Rights Commission. It's staffed by 4 full-time staff and 1 part-time intern, and the team is here. I believe our intern is also joined by Zoom, so she's watching. And we address the individual complaints of discrimination that are covered by the ordinance, as well as conducting community outreach both as an office and in partnership with the commission. Just to give you a little sense of how our office is structured, that is basically the layout. This is the first year that we've been fully staffed with person in each position, which is pretty exciting for us. It's really made a difference in terms of how we can develop procedures and get things done in an efficient way. And I don't know, maybe I'll just give a shout out. Saad is there. Maybe you can wave. That Saad is our intake specialist. Shael is there, our investigator in training. Lily is outreach for us, and Jenny is our intern. So we have a really great team. It's really been great to have a full team this year. So Moving on to this piece, I'm going to pass this to Ernest to tell you a little bit about how our work is structured under the ordinance.
Thank you, and I want to thank City Council and the City of Charlottesville for allowing us to have a full office. It's greatly appreciated. In plain language, basically what we want to do, Section 23433 of the City Human Rights Commission ordinance is add as a role to assist individuals with complaints and discrimination, to provide awareness and education and guidance, to review city policies, to seek federal work share agreements with the EEOC and HUD, to make legislative recommendations to the City Council, and to prepare recommendations to City Council related to the function of the commission.
And those are taken directly from the ordinance, but reworded in plain language just to make them a little bit simpler to understand. And we're going to address each one of those. But before we get there, just want to remind you, I usually bring this up once a year when we talk about these things. When we talk about individual service, we try to break these things out into categories in terms of how we provide services. So first and foremost, we talk about complaints, right? Because we talk about receiving complaints of unlawful discrimination that are jurisdictional to the city. Those are the things that we actually can investigate or offer mediation or all other alternative dispute resolution services for. And those are defined clearly in the Charlottesville Human Rights Ordinance. An inquiry, on the other hand, are services that we provide that are either unrelated to a complaint and or they are an allegation of discrimination that falls outside of our jurisdiction. So if something comes to us from Albemarle County, for example, that does present an allegation of unlawful discrimination, it's not within our jurisdiction. We would refer it to the appropriate agency, state or federal. Another category that I want to bring to your attention is navigation and advocacy. So when we get an inquiry, which you just defined above, that doesn't relate to a complaint of discrimination, but it's something that someone's seeking a service that's outside of what we do, and we provide either a referral to another service provider or assistance with accessing services or communication with other agencies, we classify that as navigation and advocacy. And that's an important thing because when we talk about the numbers coming up here, you'll see that we've had a shift in trying to get away from that navigation and advocacy piece because it can really take up a lot of time and can take away from our ability to address complaints. So you'll see that in the numbers and how I'll talk a little bit more about how we're addressing that. Okay, first of all, so this is the first point that Ernest read. And I'll probably take this section for a few slides because most of this is what our office handles. So the role of the commission in addressing complaints of individual discrimination is around public hearings and appeals. They haven't had one of those in a long time. I think the last appeal was probably back in 2015 or something like that. I have to look back in the notes to tell you exactly when. So they haven't had one of those recently. So most of the individual casework comes to us. So this is a quick summary of the numbers. So we record every incoming contact. That's emails, phone, walk-ins, all of that. And we had 2,060 in 2023. I remember last year there was a question, how many unique individuals are served by that? And so 288 individuals were served last year. Sometimes that's a little bit of a rough number. When we get a call that's anonymous, we'll assign it an anonymous and a date. And sometimes we're not sure if we're counting the same person twice, but I think roughly speaking, that is correct. 288 unique individuals served. Of the 214 inquiries, we just defined that as either a non-jurisdictional complaint or a contact about something other than discrimination. 98 of those inquiries, 46%, originated in Charlottesville. Housing continues to be the most often identified protected activity in both inquiries and complaints. And of the total contacts, 66.9 were classified as navigation and advocacy. So that's a lot. That's obviously over half. And that shifted a lot during the middle of the year when we had a realignment of this is what we really need to focus on, and we cut that down quite a bit. And I would credit Saad a lot for that as being our intake person to screen a lot of that stuff and refer it to the right place. So congratulations, thank you for that, because that was really important for us to be able to provide more efficient services for our complainants. We had 5 new complaints open last year. There were actually 7 filed. We've since refined the process so we don't have missed filings of non-jurisdictional complaints, but we dismissed 2 because they were non-jurisdictional, so we had 5 new complaints officially opened in 2023. So a little bit more about the takeaways from assistance with individuals. Again, 2,060 incoming contacts, 103 inquiries and complaints in Charlottesville, and that's a combination. I think we said 98 inquiries. That's in addition, those 5 complaints makes 103 total combined, and 7 new complaints open, 2 found non-jurisdictional. Here's the numbers just kind of broken out a little bit more by contact type. I don't have to go through each one of those, but we do break them up so that we can kind of see how many, where is our work going? How many of those things are people calling us back? How many of those people calling us where there's a third party asking us for advice about someone else? And then how many total incoming things are we seeing? So there's a breakdown for you. And here's a comparison over the last few years. You can see that in 2023, we were just a little bit less than in 2022, total incoming contacts. I think that's probably a little bit due to a change in venue, one, because we located ourselves from the old office by City Space down to the new office next to the post office, but I also think that also reflects a shift in away from navigation and advocacy and more towards the work around complaints. So that's a little summary for you there. And if at any point in this you have a question for me, just let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Oh, go ahead.
You might have covered this, but I just want to clarify. So when you say you have like 2,000 and some
Yeah.
contacts, but only 288 individuals, does that mean every time you have a conversation with that person and there's a back and forth, it counts as a contact?
That's exactly right.
So
Because
it's
we
like
want,
every call or email you've sent over the course of the year counts as an item there.
it does. And the reason for that is because we want to track how are we responding to things, what is the sort of the story that it tells when somebody's contacting us, and so we record all that in a big database.
Thanks.
Yep, thank you for asking. So, another thing that I want to point out in this section is in terms of inquiries and complaints, I mentioned earlier, housing was the most often identified protected activity. And this is a snapshot of the data from 2018 through 2023. And as you can see, we've had, substantially more inquiries and complaints around housing than the next highest one, which is employment. So just keep that in mind, and we'll get to talking a little bit later about what the commission's priorities are this year, but both last year and this year has been on housing just because it's the most thing we hear about most often. So also just want to point out that here's how it kind of breaks down in terms of the services that we provide. We divide the services that we provide into these various categories just to get a sense of how are we spending our time, where are things going when we receive or are responding to something. And again, navigation and advocacy was a big chunk of that. So that's just something to point out. And I would say by mid-year, we reduced it, I think, by half in terms of how many people per month we were dealing with in terms of navigation and advocacy. Again, trying to shift away because it can be very, very time consuming. And we're talking about things like housing navigation, resource navigation with regard to mental health. All those things take an inordinate amount of time. And honestly, for some things, there are great service providers willing to take the workload, and then some, we have work to do on that. So it just points to some additional needs. If you look in our full annual report in your agenda packet, you'll get to see more of a breakdown, but I just wanted to call your attention to that. Okay, so now we're going to tag team again. You ready for this?
Yes,
Okay.
let's do it. All right, so a couple of things that we try to do as the Human Rights Commission, it shows 4 action items that we have done. We try to attend any community events that we can as a commission, as well as attending anything dealing with housing, since it's so important to us, to try to get information. So when we come together, we kind of streamline our efforts, that we're not over here, over there, but we find out what is the most important thing to the community and what we can put our voices behind, that we can either write a resolution or send up legislatively to you guys to hopefully get some action done.
And in this section, this 2-433B, we kind of consider this the outreach point in that section of the ordinance. And so to that end, our outreach coordinator, Lily, had organized and attended 187 different community outreach activities. And so that ranges anything from going to table an event or assisting with a community education presentation, many different things. So she was out there getting the word out about our services, as well as networking with other partners, just to try to raise awareness around human rights and develop networks that support people in our community. And so this one I'm going to kick it back to you for
Yeah,
review of city
yes.
policies.
So 3 action items that we have done with our review of city policies is we've written a letter in support of the Local C Bill's zoning recommendation. We sent a letter to you guys, to the city council, about the expansion of the Salvation Army shelter, and sent another letter in support of the Liverpool Cedars zoning code. We also, again, the revisions, we supported that as well. And we had a public discussion talking about the Salvation Army expansion.
And ours is very small in this role. Our job there is just to make sure that the commission has what it needs to do these reviews and give them the backup to host people like the captain from Salvation Army to ask questions and develop a set of recommendations. So that's our job, administrative support on that end. So back to the federal work share. I'll take this one because HRC didn't have to do anything last year because we were stuck in the middle of including all the new revisions that HUD passed down to us in the ordinance. So fair warning, we're going to probably be coming back to you with another amended ordinance because when we did the last amendments to the ordinance, we brought that back to HUD and they provided some additional guidance, I'll say, which means we're going to do some more revisions. I always look at the opportunity to revise the ordinance as that, an opportunity, because not only do we need to fix the things that HUD has asked us to fix, it's also a chance for us to review other aspects of the ordinance that could be better organized or more clear. So we're going to be bringing in some other things to you as well. Please.
I read in the report that at some point during this process, you consulted with the Fairfax County Office of Human Rights.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, how common are offices of human rights?
That's a great question. Well, so, and actually, it's an even more interesting question, I think, is, what is it, in our June meeting of the commission, we're going to have a presentation from our intern who did a study as part of her honors thesis at William & Mary around human rights commissions in Virginia and elsewhere. But right now, there's different types of them. There's those that do enforcement work, like we're talking about for individual complaints, and then there's those that do outreach. The ones that do enforcement work are mainly located in Northern Virginia. So that's Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, and Prince William, and then us. So we're a little bit south of them. Richmond now has a human rights commission. They had one previously and recently re-upped it. It's still a commission with no enforcement ability, but I know they're moving towards that. Virginia Beach has a very long-standing human rights commission that's mostly focused on community outreach. They're actually really great at that, and that was the reason that they formed, because around community issues and issues of accessibility in the community. So there's also one in Newport News. And are there any other ones? Lily, help me with this.
So there's a little bit of a comp set, but it's not like every locality has one.
Not like every locality, hence you'll see, if you look in the report, there's a lot of things that come in from Albemarle County. They don't have a human rights commission or an office of human rights. So people come to us because we're close. We can then refer them to either the state or federal agency that could do the same thing that we could if it were jurisdictional. So,
Okay,
yeah.
great, thanks.
Thanks for the question. Yep, so anyway, in the ordinance revisions, you should expect those. I think we're going to get those hopefully in front of the commission for adoption in June, and that's adoption for recommendation to you all. We'll talk about agendas coming up, but yeah, that's coming. And
Yeah, so I want to give a thanks to Councilman Snook for attending our representative panel that we had back in January. That was greatly appreciated. It gave us a lot of information. Sad to see that some things did not happen in our state legislature with at least getting that 1 cent to help with school funding of buildings and things like that. So, but, it's nice to have that information and know where the council's thinking, and so we can help prioritize what we need to do as a commission.
in fact, like an update for this, I guess we have our next work session this Thursday on the 6th. We have invited some panelists to give council a little bit of an update and to answer questions about current status on housing issues in Charlottesville. So, yeah, we're working up towards another set of legislative recommendations for you this year.
So if you're not doing anything on June the 6th,
June the 6th, 6:30 p.m.
6:30, City Space,
Come join us.
we will have some people there, panelists, come through.
And this is also yours, Ernest. Just a little bit about recommendations to council related to the function of the commission.
Yeah, so we want to, Todd has done a lot of this, and as far as helping us change the way we work and the way we do things, because one thing that I felt, because I've been on the commission for a while, is that we really were spinning our wheels and trying to get things done, planning things and what have you. So what we have done is we've moved to streamlining everything and having everything dated, knowing when things are expected with you guys as far as when you want things for legislative recommendations, that we can get that to you in a timely manner, that you have time to look at it. If you need to bring it back to us, you can do that. But we were seeing that we were having some issues with getting traction just for us to make sure that we were being as an effective Human Rights Commission as possible. So this has helped us a lot as far as adopting and changing things so that we have that is streamlined for us.
Yep, we'll talk a little bit, that might be coming right up, that we'll talk about work plans and stuff.
Yeah.
And again, that's our job, is to provide the support that the commission needs to, for example, change their HRC rules and procedures, which is sort of like the bylaws in addition to the ordinance that guide what the commission does. So we work with the commission on doing those things, and again, yeah, the annual meeting planning and strategic planning, so. Okay, here we go. Here's the chart. Oh, look, that's how this works. Okay, I'm gonna do like one at a time. I forgot how we set this. Oh, okay, let's go back.
You got it?
We'll do one at a time, and you go down each one. How's that?
All right. So in 2023, we narrowed down the focus to housing and issues to provide substantive recommendations to City Council or to the Council this year. And this year, we are building upon that success that has helped us streamline and find a goal to work on. In 2023, the commissioners used their platform as a publicly appointed advisory board to successfully amplify local housing issues. So we had a couple of panels last year. We had one where I think during COVID, we had a virtual one that was a success. And then we had another where we had the Haven, who else did we have?
I think Patram
was there, and that was a big success as far as for us to hear from them and for them to tell us their story. And so we're going to expand on that again on Thursday. Hopefully we can get more information and get good feedback and keep moving. We re-elected our chair and vice chair from 2023 and added a new commissioner. And then this year we were able to add 4, so thank you very much for accepting those recommendations. Those that came aboard back in January, that listed their names back in December and have joined us in March.
Great. Sorry about the layout of that slide. That was kind of interesting. Let's see what this one does. Oh, there we go.
Before you go to the next one, the middle slide there about the publicly appointed advisory body for housing, we usually have an opening on the housing advisory committee that, and so if you find someone that's particularly passionate about it, it is really a good committee because they recommend where the housing funds go. So there's really a pretty powerful position. So if someone feels like they want to do something different or to expand on their, I'm not trying to poach your committee, but I'm just letting you know. Thank you.
Just quick add to that as well, the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund CAF committee, which makes recommendations on funding, has had vacancies that have been vacant for I think over a year at this point. So definitely a body in need of anybody who's interested.
We will hang with y'all because y'all know how to get some committee members.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay.
A little.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to work on that.
Yeah.
It's also a good reminder to maybe we can liaise with them as well for ideas and see what they're working on a little bit more.
Yeah,
So.
and maybe that is definitely a good point for more information, and maybe even instead of an ad hoc committee, maybe someone on our board could do that and be a part of one of those commissions and committees and can bring back information for us straight from those committees. So
Ready for the next one?
mm-hmm. So this goes back to the work plan I was talking about that I wasn't supposed to talk about 2 slides ago, but I'm talking about it now. So I've had field day today, so I'm coming off a field day and all that stuff at school, so I apologize. This has been very important for us, and our commissioners appreciate having this work plan and knowing what we're expecting and what we need to do whenever we have a meeting. That when we walk in, we have a plan, and we're working toward that plan. I believe in that because it helps us stay focused and not picking and choosing and all over the place. But it helps us stay aware and what's needed. Does anybody have any questions about what you see on the work plan?
What would the public hearing training kind of entail?
How do we do it? How do we do a public hearing? Where we need to do it? What is expected of us as a commission when we have one? What does Remy and those guys need to make sure it works out fine? What do we need to do as a commission? Is there anything special that we need to? So just things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. In the current version of the ordinance, it's a pretty complex process if you look at it. Their role can go as far as introducing new evidence, cross-examining witnesses. It's not just a review of record at the moment, so it's a pretty complex process. We're actually talking about that process now, and is that a reasonable expectation for the commission as a volunteer body, and is there a better way that they could serve the purpose of a public hearing if we make some tweaks to that ordinance? So stay tuned, because I'm glad you asked that, because that's important, and once we revise it, we want to make sure that commissioners are prepared to execute what they plan. So, yep. Any other questions on this slide?
Thank you for that question.
Oh, look, now this one goes backwards. Let's just pull the whole thing up.
Yes, go ahead.
My PowerPoint skills are apparently lacking. Maybe it got changed. I know why we got it. Yeah, we changed formats and we lost our little advancing. That's okay. Here we go. So let me just talk a little bit about just highlights of the 2023 year. We filled all our full-time positions, which is exciting. We're so glad to have such a wonderful team. I don't think we could do half of what we did this year without them. So thank you so much to you guys. It's really amazing. And what we've been doing with that in this year, so just kind of sliding over to the updates, we're really trying to solidify the procedures. It's hard to create a set of procedures in terms of how to run an office when you don't have a full team. Now that we have a full team, we can figure out how to delegate things, how to make things a little bit more standardized so that they run efficiently, which is super important when it comes to addressing individual complaints of discrimination, because they're very complex processes. And so, again, kudos to the team, because we've all kind of contributed to writing our procedures. I would say we're at the halfway point for writing most of those procedures, maybe even further. We've got some really solid drafts on all of our procedures. We're going to work through the rest of the year trying to make those finalized so that they really work and we're very efficient and fluid. Again, at the end of last year, we had 16 open complaint cases. That includes the 5 that we opened in 2023, plus the ones that are ongoing. Again, it's a big process to open a complaint, and especially if it doesn't resolve an alternative dispute resolution like mediation, it can be a very big process to finish and see an investigation all the way through to its conclusion. So we're really excited to have, again, the team in place so that we have the processes in place to process complaints quickly. And that's going to be especially important when we enter the Fair Housing Assistance Program workshare, because HUD's expectations are that we will process these complaints efficiently and effectively. Again, going back to that navigation and advocacy piece, 67% of all of our incoming and outgoing contacts were classified as navigation and advocacy in 2023, and 49% of those were housing navigation. So again, can't emphasize enough how complex the housing need is out there, and there's some great providers out there doing the hard work. It's just that the demand is so big, we have work to do to meet it all. And what we're going to continue to do in our office is focus less on that, especially as we move towards the Fair Housing Assistance Program certification, because we know that we really have to make a priority to process complaints, and that's what the ordinance mandates us to do. Here's a little snapshot of the work plan that we have that runs through the end of June. So we did base our work plan in the office on the fiscal year, because I know that's how city manager's work plan is functioning. So tying it into that, these are just the key things that we're trying to work on. Again, most of these are things we've talked about. We're working on revisions to the ordinance. We worked with the commission to develop their work plan, which is now in effect. We've been digging deep into our standard operating procedures, and I think we're half, if not 3/4 of the way done with those. We are expanding our community outreach considerably, thanks to Lily's work, and we're continuing to build our staff capacity through training. So everybody in the office has had new investigator training. Sada and Shael have both taken the EEOC's counselor training, so intake counseling training. We continue to look for equity training opportunities whenever they arise, and just trauma-informed care, mental health, first aid care, all those kinds of things. We try to make sure that everybody has a good grasp on those things, and we'll continue to do that as opportunities arise. This is our work plan for the rest of the fiscal year, or the start of the 2025 fiscal year and into next fiscal year. So we're going to continue to pursue that interim certification as a fair housing assistance program. Again, we'll probably provide that ordinance draft to you sometime later this year, so stay tuned on that. We'll continue to execute the Human Rights Commission work plan, which is timed in a funny way because we time it to start again at the time they do their strategic planning when new counselors or commissioners are appointed in March. So that's it runs through March of next year, and then we'll move on and develop another one. We will hopefully finalize those standard operating procedures and kind of get them all set in kind of a manual for how to run the office, which I'm really excited about. And again, continuing that community outreach, and I know we have some specific ideas. Lily and I won't spill all the beans, but Lily and I are continually talking about ways we can do regular programming. I know we're collaborating a bit with Ashley to do some internal equity work as well for city employees, so stay tuned on that because more is to come. And again, continue to build capacity in staff to train folks to handle individual complaints of discrimination, and to be prepared when we get the FAP work share to take advantage of all the training opportunities that come through HUD when we enter that. So that's that work plan for next year. And questions?
I've got a couple.
Yeah.
One's very small, but you said that 49% of the 67% of the navigation and advocacy calls were for housing.
Yes.
Is that 49% of the 67%?
That's
or is
correct.
it 49 of the 100%?
So such a good question. Yeah. 49 of the total navigation and advocacy contacts. 40, whatever it is.
9%.
49%. Good statistical question. Yes. Yes. Is
Okay.
housing navigation.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And then in the report, you mentioned the challenges of non-English speakers
Yes.
in finding out about the office and then
Yes.
also interacting with the office.
Yep.
And I know you wrote that developing a comprehensive language access plan is one of the tasks for this coming year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a kind of general idea what that might look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty well on our way. I feel fairly confident right now that we can. So let me sort of lay out the things that we're doing. So we now have for interpretive services, we contract with the IRC. So if somebody comes in or contacts the office who's a non-English speaker, we can present. We have some printed cards in the 6 main languages that are spoken in Charlottesville. We can present those in their language. They can grab the one they want and put their information on it if they're able to. Then we contact the IRC to schedule an appointment with an interpreter to find out what services they need. So that's how we can handle the intake component for people who are non-English speakers. In addition, with IRC, we can do all the interpretive services needed for the intake and complaint process, taking affidavits. They're pretty comprehensive in that regard. What IRC doesn't do for us is translation services, so actually taking a document and either going from English to another language or another language back to English. And so we're working with another company in Alexandria currently to translate many of our main documents and anything that comes through through an investigation or something like that that needs translation, we work through them, and they've been pretty amazing. It's really complicated, let's say, to translate, especially into a language that reads from, say, right to left. We've been doing a lot of our brochures in that, and just the formatting, getting all that stuff in the right place is really tricky. And so they've been amazing because we'll take a stab at it with the translation that we get, send it back to them, they'll help us format it, we'll get it out. So it's been great. We're in the process. So I feel like we have a structure now to deal with most of our needs, but you never know. That's what I found with any of this stuff is you think you got this system down and then you get a new case and you go, oh, we didn't anticipate that. So for right now, I feel like we have a good plan in place. And I know Ashley's working on a comprehensive language access plan for the whole city. So we just kind of have some stopgap stuff in the meantime.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And is there an ability to fill out that initial inquiry card, not in person, but online?
Not yet, but there could be. What's currently being translated is we have an intake questionnaire, and I know the city website, you can click an accessibility button to change the language of the text on the website. We will also have a list of all of our intake questionnaires in the 6 languages that we're getting them translated into. But again, work in progress,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
those will be up on the website
Okay,
soon. Yeah.
great. Glad it's in progress. That's
Yeah, it's
awesome.
exciting.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you, both of you and your staff for all the good work that you do. I called last week, I guess it was, or the week before last, and had an issue. You know, were very helpful, so I appreciate that. Can you remind me when you actually have a complaint? You know, things have gotten real, someone has lodged a complaint, and there's some actionable next step that should be taken. What does that look like? I mean, what sort of, I guess, legal remit do you have? I mean, if someone brings a complaint about, I guess, the city, I could see how that would be straightforward, but if someone brings a complaint about a landlord, what would you do?
Okay, well, I heard 2 questions in there too. Like, if somebody brings a complaint against the city, like, you know, in which the city is the named respondent in the complaint, we wouldn't handle that just because that's a conflict of interest, because legal
Okay.
counsel for us is the city.
Got it.
So
Okay.
obviously that would present a
Okay.
conflict of interest. However, we could refer that out to either the Attorney General's Office of Civil Rights, the EEOC, or the Virginia Fair Housing Office,
see.
depending on the type of
Okay.
complaint it was. Now, if it's a private sector respondent, so you mentioned a landlord, what we first do is get the basic facts of what they're presenting, determine if it's jurisdictional, filed timely, and presents what we call a prima facie case of discrimination. Is there a protected class identified, and did the harm that they experience equate to mistreatment or some other disparate treatment based on that particular individual's protected class? If that's all true, then we would authorize that for as a complaint, and we can authorize mediation services to try to resolve it through a settlement agreement. If that doesn't work, or we can even do informal dialogue as well. It sort of depends on what the nature of the case is, what the complainant's seeking, that sort of thing. But we usually try to resolve through alternative dispute resolution first. If that's unsuccessful, then we move toward full investigation. And once a case goes through investigation, you asked a good one, because housing's a really particular one. It has some different stipulations than do all the other protected activities. But in the case of a housing discrimination complaint, once the investigation is complete, we render a finding as to whether or not there's reasonable cause to believe a violation of the ordinance took place. If we find that there's no reasonable cause, the complainant has the ability to appeal that decision to the commission. Commission can either uphold or overturn that decision. If they overturn it, they could potentially send it back to us and say, we need more information, you need to investigate this more deeply, we don't believe that the finding is supported. Or they may say, you know, we think this should go back to mediation. There's a lot of things that could happen based on commission review. Again, that's the public hearing piece of what they need to learn how to do.
Yeah.
If there's a finding of reasonable cause in a housing case in particular, we'd be in consultation with city management and the city attorney's office if it was approaching this. The city is obligated to file a civil action on behalf of the complainant. And that's part of what we call substantial equivalence to federal fair housing law, which is a requirement of entering that work share with HUD. And that's why that exists in the ordinance.
So that's really where the teeth would come in then,
That's where the
ultimately.
teeth would come in. But again, you know, if there's a finding of reasonable cause, a lot of times, when this is in talking with other offices that do enforcement around the state, most of the time, if there's a finding of reasonable cause, most parties will want to move to mediation, especially the respondent, because they may feel, okay, this is getting real. It's going to either go in front of the commission for a vote as to whether or not to talk about it publicly, or they could settle in court, in alternative dispute resolution like mediation, or in the case of housing, if either party says we're ready to go to court, it goes straight to court, and regardless, the commission or the city attorney's office would file a civil action. So there's different ways for remedy. What the commission can't do is that they can't award damages, nor can the office. We can't issue injunctive orders. We can't award punitive damages. We can't do any of those things. That's left to the courts. But we can do other things, and they can sometimes, if it's something that city council has power over, they may make a recommendation to council, like, council, it may be good for you to address this through either a funding change or a budget change or something like that. So those are different ways. There's creative ways that they could address it, but that's kind of the scope of it.
Okay.
Sorry if that was confusing. It has a big diagram when we present this in presentations, but yeah.
Yeah, it certainly has changed. When I first got here, must have been 30 years ago, I did it for the NAACP. When complaints came to NAACP, one of the first things we had to do is find out if the individual had gone through, at that time, it was a lot of companies that were, people felt that they were discriminated against, and we had to make sure that the training we got from the state NAACPs, that they had to go through their company's grievance procedure first, type of thing. So I'm glad that because it could get confusing and intimidating for people who don't want to deal with the company or whatever anymore. So,
Yes.
other questions or comments?
One question, one of the things mentioned in the report is the move to the new physical location, which you called out have been good for collaboration, but has created a specific challenge in that intake is essentially, your intake staff is essentially doing intake for 3 separate city departments. Is there anything that could be done that would be helpful to remedy that situation, or because that obviously seems like just a significant strain and challenge for your staff?
Yeah, it's a particular challenge just given that location and the
Right.
structure of the space, which we had an idea that might happen and then saw how it would play out in reality. Kudos to Assad for all the hard work and sort of fielding all the different visitors that come to the office. We actually have some pretty substantial proposals we'd like to make. They're not ready for presentation yet, so I'm gonna keep those under wraps at the moment. But we do have some ideas as to how that could be resolved, and for the benefit of all the offices in that space. But yeah, it is a challenge. It's just the nature of whenever you move locations, there's unforeseen things that you'll have to deal with, and we're working through that at the moment. But thanks for asking about it. I think we do have a pretty good proposal for it that we should be presenting pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, it was interesting to read in the report that within housing that disability is the most common protected class receiving complaints, which, perhaps shouldn't have, it wasn't shocking, but, it's not, maybe not the first thing I or many people in the community think of when they think of housing discrimination, yet
Yeah.
it's very common.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Thank you. Lloyd, anyone else have any questions? You guys are rocking and rolling. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next item is the transit area strategic plan. Garland?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Garland Williams, Director of Charlottesville Area Transit. Have the pleasure of presenting to you our transit strategic plan. This is a requirement by the state. It's a legislative requirement that we have our transit strategic plan adopted by June 30th. This is a combination of work that's been gone over about 15 months now. We're at the final stages. We've had a lot of, I believe, public interfacing and feedback. I'm going to bring up to you today our consultants from Kimley Horn, Nick Adamo and Sam Sink. And I want to give a special shout out to Ben Chambers, who has really helped me shepherd this thing along. We've had some key positions in transit that weren't there, and without Ben's help, I don't know if we would have made the timeline. So thank you, sir. With that, bringing up Nick.
All right, good evening, Mayor Wade, council members. I'm glad to be here tonight. My name is Nick Adamo. I am a transportation planner at Kimley Horn and project manager of the consultant team that is supporting CAT in the city on the development of the Transit Strategic Plan. As Garland mentioned, I'm joined by Sam Sink, my technical lead and task manager on this project, and we're grateful for the opportunity to brief you all on the TSP. All right, we'll start with a brief overview of the TSP project and process, and then walk you through the work we've completed to date over the last year or so. We'll then shift to the bulk of our content today, which focuses on the actual TSP document itself and what you can find in there, and then we'll leave you with some next steps as we chart out our finalization and submission to the state. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions as we go. We'll leave some time at the end to have a discussion as needed. So the Transit Strategic Plan document is a document that all transit agencies operating in the more urbanized areas of the Commonwealth are required to complete in order to ensure that transit services are planned and implemented to meet current and future community needs. The program is managed by the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, DRPT, which has published guidelines that help agencies craft their TSPs and ensure consistency among them. As a result, CAT's TSP will serve as a strategic planning document, a blueprint of sorts, for service planning as well as operational and capital needs over the next 10 years. And once complete, the TSP will replace CAT's Transit Development Plan, previously required by DRPT from 2018, as the agency's key planning document that will guide improvements to our service over the next 10 years. Throughout this process, we've been able to evaluate existing service and performance and develop improvements that work to meet existing and projected needs and respond to changes in demand, both current and future. Overall, the process and outcomes of this planning effort will mean that CAT is prepared to better serve the region in the years to come. So, as Garland noted, we've made a lot of progress over the last year. We kicked off the project last summer with a series of public engagement events and activities, including an online public survey and a series of pop-up events across the community. Our public survey last summer got over 500 responses, which we were very pleased by, and helped us really refine our understanding of how current riders use and how they feel about the system, as well as really reinforce what rider priorities for improvements are. We've also convened a stakeholder group made up of city and county staff from various departments, other local and regional transit agencies, state and regional partners, and representatives from key community institutions like UVA. This group has guided us along the way and has helped us broaden the reach of our outreach and engagement efforts. We also sought out the opinions and experiences of our frontline transit operators and staff, who of course are essential in providing service day to day and know the needs of riders and our operational constraints and opportunities better than perhaps anyone. All in all, this first phase of engagement last summer really helped us augment our technical data and evaluation and analyses and guide the development of our recommendations and service improvements. Our second phase of public and stakeholder engagement this spring focused on our full draft TSP document, and that included a 4-week public review and comment period of the document that ended just last week. We made the full draft document available for review online with an online feedback form that was used to collect comments on the draft document. We received 23 comments on the draft document, 80% of which expressed support for the plan. We also provided briefings to local and regional stakeholders, including Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission's Regional Transit Partnership and our TSP-specific stakeholder group, similar to what we're doing with you all today, to walk them through the contents of the plan, get their feedback, and really partner with them to help us spread the word and get feedback from their communities and constituents. To further spread the word, we also launched a robust print and digital promotion campaign with posters at the downtown transit station, large format ads on board buses, social media posts to again, let people know that this is out there. We're looking for comments as we work to finalize it. And we partnered with our stakeholder partners as well to further amplify that message. All of this brings us here today, our briefing to council, which we see as a key near final step in our process. I wanted to quickly touch on our public survey findings from last summer's public survey. Unsurprisingly, folks told us that the most in-demand type of improvement was about frequency. People want more frequent routes that will allow them to, make better use of the system. We also heard a lot about the need for expanded hours of operation, service earlier in the day, later at night, both during the week and on weekends. We also were able to reaffirm through this process that transit provides many different benefits to many different members of our community, and people use transit for more than just getting to and from work. Our survey respondents indicated that they ride CAT as a safer, more cost and time efficient way to get around compared to driving, and that people use the system not just to get to work, but also to shopping, recreation, medical appointments, school, etc. We also found it pretty important to hear from folks who don't or cannot ride the bus today, to understand why that might be and what it might take to get them on board. And again, we saw some similar themes here around the need for better frequency, better hours of operation, etc.
Sorry, were these from the summer 2023?
That's correct.
Survey response?
Yes.
Okay.
And overall, our work completed to date has brought us to our final draft TSP document that we feel is technically sound and community informed. So we'll now talk a bit more about the actual document itself. There are a few key points that we think are really important to underscore here. As I noted earlier, the TSP will serve as a blueprint for CAT as it works to improve and enhance service over the next 10 years. Perhaps most importantly, the completion, council approval, and submission of this plan to the state, to DRPT, is required in order for CAT to be eligible for state funding. And the plan, Chapter 4 and 5, lays out a forecast for what levels of funding will be needed in the future to make all of this happen. Equally important to note is that this plan is non-binding, and its approval does not lock us in to the recommendations forever, nor the forecasts. It doesn't mean sudden overnight changes for riders either. The plan is designed to be flexible and can be adjusted in future updates. And these future updates will include annual written updates that CAT makes to DRPT every year, and more minor full document updates every 5 years. And this type of flexibility is super important as CAT, other transit agencies across the Commonwealth and the country, frankly, are facing a lot of challenging, many exciting as well, changes in terms of funding, technology, regional coordination, fare policy, etc. So the TSP is made up of 5 main chapters as well as an appendix. Chapters 1 and 2 really seek to set the tone for the plan with a vision, goals, and in Chapter 2, an in-depth analysis of CAT's current performance, as well as various factors that influence the demand for transit, including current and future land use, jobs, population, and the socio-demographic makeup of the community. Really to ensure that we're not only meeting the demand for transit, but providing transit for those in the community who need it the most. Chapter 3 includes our planned service improvements, how we're improving frequency, coverage, hours of operation, things like that. And chapters 4 and 5 lay out how we will implement these improvements over time with details on implementation and financing. So in the slides that follow, we'll dive a bit deeper into chapters 3, 4, and 5, which are really the meat of the document. So starting with our planned improvements found in Chapter 3 of the document, we have identified 40 service improvements, many of which are taken from recent separate local and regional planning efforts, mainly CAT's System Optimization Plan from 2021 and TJPDC's Regional Transit Vision Plan from 2022. Both these studies and these planning efforts were the outcomes of pretty quality planning processes and public and stakeholder engagement. A lot of time and effort went into them, and reflecting these recommendations in this transit strategic plan document will ensure that this past work continues to be documented and really sets a good stage for them to be implemented. All service improvements are fiscally constrained, meaning that they must be aligned with funding that can be reasonably expected, and grouped into one of three timeframes: short-term, midterm, and long-term. This is all in keeping with the DRPT guidelines for TSPs. And these timeframes span the next 10 years between fiscal year 2025 and 2034. We've also included a number of what we call unconstrained improvements and projects, those that we don't yet have the funding for, but we want to document because we feel strongly that they are needed in the future. We've also included a number of non-service improvements for future consideration and study that we'll get into shortly. So in the short-term bucket of improvements, what we can expect in the next 1 to 4 years, these improvements really represent the lowest hanging fruit in terms of what we can address and achieve and really serve the areas in our community with the highest ridership potential. So this includes targeted updates to route alignments, where the routes go, as well as improving service frequencies in the weekday. We will also continue the implementation of the MicroCat on-demand microtransit pilot, currently serving Pantops and Route 29 North areas of the county. One example of a short-term improvement is on the screen here, in which we will split the existing Route 2 into 2 new routes to better serve the community. And at the end of the short-term summary, at year 4, we will have implemented most of CAT's system optimization plan recommendations, and we will have 30% more service out on the streets compared to today. And here is a full list of everything in that short-term bucket of improvements. Looking to the midterm, years 4 through 8, continuing our improvements to frequencies during the weekday and making some additional targeted route realignments. Also looking to improve weekend frequencies during this time frame, including the reintroduction of Sunday service across the system. And one example here on the screen of a midterm improvement is shifting the alignment of the Route 9. At the end of this midterm timeframe, we will have completed all of the recommendations in the system optimization plan. We will begin to implement recommendations from the Regional Transit Vision Plan, and we will have 70% more service out on the streets compared to today. And again, a full list of our midterm improvements is shown here on the screen. And you'll find this in Chapter 3 of the full TSP document with a lot more detail. And finally, our long-term improvements, years 8 through 10. We will continue to improve our weekday frequencies so that all routes offer service every 30 minutes or better, emphasis on or better. We really want to take what we heard and found from the community in our data analysis, which shows a lot of demand and need for more frequent service. We'll also continue to improve our weekend frequencies, so much so that Sunday service on most routes will have a matching span of service to that on Saturday, really for that consistent weekend service across the board. An example of this shown on the screen is increasing frequency on the Route 8 to every 30 minutes. This time frame in the long term will continue to implement the Regional Transit Vision Plan recommendations, and overall, once this is complete, at the end of year 10, we'll have 110% more service on the streets compared to where we are today. And again, our full list of long-term timeframe improvements. Our unconstrained improvements, things we don't yet feel confident that we can forecast the funding for, but we would love to do. Additional improvements to weekend service frequencies, reintroducing more Sunday service across the system, and continuing to tweak the alignments of routes and maybe extend some routes as well. Our full list of unconstrained improvements are here. That list you just heard encompasses our service recommendations, so improvements to the actual routes. There are a number of other topics that we think are equally important from what we heard and what we found in the data. We call these our non-service recommendations, and we see these topics as pretty ripe for future study, consideration, and assessment. Improvements to the customer experience, transfer opportunities, internal processes like tracking and monitoring on-time performance. There's been a lot of discussion and activity around regional coordination, our fare policy, whether or not we introduce fares to ride the bus or keep it fare-free. This plan does not take a stance on that. We've prepared scenarios that reflect both scenarios, knowing that is a very robust discussion to come in the future. And a number of other non-service recommendations that we'll continue to keep tabs on, knowing that all in all, these things, as much as the service, affect the rider experience and the quality of the system. At this point, I'd like to bring up my colleague Sam to talk about the more technical details of chapters 4 and 5.
Thanks, Nick. So in Chapter 4, we looked at what it would take to actually implement all of these service recommendations. And obviously, we'll need some more vehicles to put all this extra service out on the street. And in addition to that, we also have the scheduled replacement of the existing vehicles. And so taking those two things together, we estimate that we would need to purchase approximately 74 new buses over the course of this 10-year plan. That assumes that we are following federal guidelines related to transit asset management requirements and following the statewide transit asset management plan that DRPT has, which CAT is a member of and is beholden to. We also are assuming that any vehicle purchased after 2027 will be a zero emissions vehicle. That is in keeping with the zero emissions feasibility study that's, we wrapped up the feasibility portion of that this spring, so that's in keeping with that. And then in addition to the vehicles, there's also some capital needs that will be required in order to implement this additional service. Primarily, the existing CAT facility will need to be upgraded and expanded to accommodate those additional vehicles, as well as upgraded to be able to accommodate zero emissions vehicles. And then from a kind of, just service on the street perspective, we did hear about the need for additional bus stop facilities, shelters, benches, trash cans. So we do include some money and planning for bus shelter installations over the course of the 10-year plan.
A quick question. In addition to the CAT facility, or maybe this is included in the CAT facility, would the downtown transit center be anticipated to need significant upgrades or changes in order to accommodate this growth in the fleet? Or is it just kind of the Avon site that would need that?
Just the Avon site. Part of the service recommendations in the realignment of some of the service is, making downtown a little bit less of the focal point. So we'd be putting some additional resources to, more crosstown connections.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so Chapter 5 deals with kind of the nuts and bolts of how we're going to program and pay for this 10-year plan. So DRPT requires that the recommendations be financially constrained, and the cost estimates and other details, to get it financially constrained, we're making some assumptions. So DRPT, does like to note to agencies that those details can be updated, as conditions change. None of this is stuck in time. Those recommendations, they strive to maximize our use of federal and state resources. We want to try to minimize that local contribution that's required for, the base service and for the expansion of service. The improvements, especially the frequency increases, do require some pretty significant increases in operational funding. Again, we tried to make use of as many federal and state funding sources as possible to minimize that local operational impact. But there are, especially in 2026 and beyond, a need to increase the level of local support. And that's not just because of the service expansion. That is also in large part due to the Transit Ridership Incentive Program grant, or TRIP, that would be expiring in 2025, and that helps to subsidize the fare-free operations. And then the Federal CARES Act will be unavailable after 2025 as well. So that's part of why there is an uptick in costs in terms of the local funding starting in 2026. Also want to note that the adoption of this plan is required by DRPT in order for CAT to receive future state funding. And I believe the deadline for that is June 30th. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Nick.
Thanks, Sam. All right, so that's the bulk of our content for you today. We'll leave you with some additional information on the steps.
The actual study wasn't in our packet. Is it online?
It's online, yeah, website.
Okay.
Yes, I apologize. I thought you all had
And
access to the full
it's linked
document.
in the packet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 168
That's why,
pages,
yes.
yeah.
There's a link.
The full report, not this presentation. The full
Okay.
report, yeah.
Yes, also happy to provide the presentation, of course.
Presentation is great too.
Sure.
Yeah.
And our packet for this meeting was only 364 pages. So
Yeah.
we had
Okay.
Yeah.
additional
Some
room.
additional light reading for you all. All right. So the past few months have been pretty productive. In April, as I mentioned before, we had our briefing to the Regional Transit Partnership, as well as our reconvening for the final time, our TSP stakeholder group. Early last month, we published the draft TSP as it exists online for public review and comments. We've concluded our public comment period, and we are now in the process of finalizing the document. And now we're in June, believe it or not, seeking council's consideration for approving this plan in 2 weeks on your June 17th meeting, so we can package everything up, get it to DRPT by June 30th, and really look ahead to start implementing everything, which we're really excited about. Happy to take your questions and discuss further.
Start down here with Michael and this work.
Sure, yeah, I don't really have too many questions. I feel like a lot of this we've discussed before, and obviously a non-binding required document. I think it's good. It's given us flexibility for significantly expanding services, and I would guess for the first time, including zero emission goals as part of it. So I feel comfortable and totally ready to support the document as presented. I guess one question is just with the fare-free component that's called out, that there are scenarios with and without fare-free. I'm curious if, like, transit agencies, as we grow, are transit agencies seeing that fare-free is significantly helping ridership, or, because it's obviously not a huge portion of our budget, but it seems like that's a decision council will need to make in the next year or so. So I'm just thinking about it. I don't know if that's a clear question, but.
Great question. It is a clear question. So what we try to do is allow council to make the decision. So you're going to have an opportunity to work with the Board of Supervisors, Almar Board of Supervisors, to make that decision about fare-free, because it affects them also. If we turn the fares back on, we can't just turn it on in the city. What happened in the city and the county. One of the things that I am cautious about is when you ask the questions about transit agencies, it is a mixed bag. So some agencies who are fare-free now have seen a spike in some activities that they didn't like the unhoused or something like that, and they are reverting back to adding fares. And then there are other places where they are charging a fare now, and they're looking at doing exactly what we're doing and taking the fare system away. In Richmond, there was a big push to get GRTC to go fare-free. They actually ponied up a significant more money to actually allow them to go fare-free next fiscal year, and they're having considerations about extending that. They have seen a spike in ridership. We have seen a spike in ridership, even though we're still running what we consider to be lifeline service. So I believe it is helping. Ultimately, though, it is your decision to whether we turn it back on or not.
Definitely. Yeah, no, and my bias is I think it's a positive thing. I think it helps make transit truly public transportation. So hope we'll be thinking about and prepared for that as council in the next year or so. Not a question, but the only other thought was just in the financial feasibility component of it, just the midterm, about $10 million of new investment needed, long-term $20 million, which on our own may be feasible but very difficult unless we really make it one of our top priorities as city council. But it just hit home how transformative it would be to have a regional transit authority with a dedicated funding source, which I know everybody is working towards, but it just really hit that point home even more.
Absolutely. You've said it many times, and I've said it to this body before. Eventually, a dedicated funding source will relieve the pressure off the general funds from the city and the county. Ultimately, where we want to go, I don't think the general fund is going to be able to support that. So having a dedicated funding source would allow us to be able to do more transit, make it more reliable, more efficient, more frequent.
That's it for me, and I know a lot of work went into this, so
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody on the team involved.
Hello. I've got a quick follow-up to Michael's question about Fare Free and your response that we would have to talk with the county. Does the county get a vote in that, or do we just chat with them? Is it ultimately up to us?
So,
Yes.
Yes, and yes.
they have a vote in the sense that they fund us. They are a funding partner. They are a crucial component to whether we turn it on or off. So there does need to be discussions between the two legislative bodies about whether we continue the model we have now. They were funding us before. They were a part of the model, allowing us to go fare free. We had to go and consult them. So we would say the same model applies when we're about to turn, if we're going to turn it back on.
Right. I wasn't trying to start a fight with them. I was just curious about do we talk with them and we confer and then we come back and we vote here, or is there some kind of joint situation that we need to
It's more
get
that
together?
because right now, you're the legislative body. They buy service from
Right.
us.
Right, yeah. Okay, thank you. And then, right at the beginning, Nick, you mentioned that this is all based on projected needs. Where does the math for the projected needs come from?
Projected needs in terms of just demand for transit, or so we did a pretty robust demographic analysis. We took census data. We really looked at where the jobs and the population are today, where they will be projected to be in the future. We looked at several different cross sections of the community where there are low-income communities, people of color, zero-car households, people that historically have a much greater need for and reliance on transit. We mapped that out, and we really just tried to connect the dots, so to speak. Make sure our provision of service, the lines on the map, the frequencies are really matching not just the demand, but the actual need as well. Sam, if you have any additional technical details, but yeah, I think you might be better suited to talk about that. A lot of really nerdy tools and data went into this, so I want to make sure we answer your question.
Yeah, don't ask us about data. We get excited about it. We used a tool called Replica as well, which uses anonymized travel data, real-world travel data, to see where people actually are traveling. And we kind of paired that with the demographic analysis Nick described to be able to really get at where people need to go and maybe will need to go in the future.
Okay, cool. So it's exciting to hear that it came from you all and wasn't like numbers we borrowed from VDOT or anything.
That's correct. It was all analysis for this specific effort.
Okay, excellent. Thank
But
you.
we also wanted to make sure we didn't leave any gaps. So the plan evolves over making sure that there are no gaps in services and there are no areas that are get left behind. We're kind of raising the bar and making sure that everybody has access.
Right, yeah. But that's based on the initial math.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and then it's tweaked at the edges. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me. I've seen this report in various stages. for quite a while, and it's really, I know it has to be gratifying to see it all kind of coming together, so kudos on the good work. And again, it seems like there's been a number of the different reports and unconstrained and constrained and all that is sort of finally finding its way into a single document. And I also like the fact that, at least from what I saw on the slides, that you've also integrated the component about the battery electric buses or whatever, the non-diesel buses. So it looks like what we've got is like a really complete, integrated, tight report that we can move to move forward. So that's exciting.
So I have a couple questions. First of all, is there any discussion, long-term planning for our big, beautiful, essentially unused downtown transit center?
I'm gonna, yes, but it's not necessarily in this study. So
Okay.
we are in conversations right now.
I'm waiting patiently.
It's not us.
I know.
So we are in conversations right now with the police department. They have asked about occupying the space on the second floor of the transit center. We are required as a transit agency to take the lease that we are going to, and we had to send it to FTA, and they sent it through their legal review process. They tell us that can take up to 6 months. We are quickly approaching that 6-month mark. But we were also informed that the legal person who was doing our review has left the organization.
Of course.
That was about 2-3 weeks ago. But I was assured that they're still going to make their time frame. So with that said,
Who did you have to ask? I'm sorry.
FTA.
Yeah.
The reason we have to ask FTA is because, and I think I need to make sure that the public and everyone on this dais understands, the transit facility is the city's on paper. Technically, it is the federal government's property
By regulation.
because they put 80% of the funding in.
Interesting.
16% came from the state and only 4% came from us. Because of that funding model, they own the property. If we were ever to sell the property, the proceeds do not come back to the city. The proceeds go back to the federal government. They helped us to buy the land acquisition and construct the building. It is technically their property. We are able to manage it on their behalf.
And if it were to be converted to some non-transit use, would we have to buy it from them essentially?
I'm not sure what the process would be. We would have to figure that out. But
It would amount to that, but it's very complicated.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that happen, though. So the question that you're posing, normally when they put that level of funding in a project, it's going to be there till it's.
It's not that they like fronted it and we're paying it back and gradually becomes more and more hours over the time.
They
It
don't
stays.
want. They don't want you to pay it back because they want to, in my humble opinion, have control of the asset.
Yeah. Well, obviously there were decisions made when that was built that some of us might now say were not wise. And the question is, do we have any ability to revisit those decisions? And maybe as a practical matter, we don't.
Well, but you will have, if we are able to secure approval to move forward with the plan, PD will be on the mall level, and we have in the FY25 budget approved the return of customer service representatives that would actually resource the first floor again. So the building would go back live. If these two things can come together at the same time, the entire building would be activated, and that really has been the goal.
And what does the police department want to use it for?
It's the Professional Standards Bureau, so the Fourth Amendment analysts and investigations.
office space.
Yeah, office spaces. Also, the I don't want to minimize, the bike team would operate out of that space as well. And we've also talked about being able to stage support for community activities on the mall, Fridays after 5, Tom, any big event. they could actually use
Yeah.
that location to originate out of and have a good sight line for various things that may be going on.
And additionally, we want to have a presence, a police presence at the transit center
In
for
general.
walkthroughs and in general. Because we have seen a little bit of an uptick in some matters concerning some incidents that are happening, and we believe a police presence may help us to alleviate those issues.
And it brings back another set of bathroom usages past 5 p.m.
Correct.
Right.
Currently, is it essentially empty?
It is. It's been empty almost a year and a half, almost 2 years now.
Where's your
since
office?
I'm out at
Avon.
Avon. So
I don't need a
with
Mac.
that said, please come see me. I want to show you our facility because part of what the group that we were able to take to Champaign-Urbana, the facilities there were breathtaking, and we want to make sure you understand where we are and the development that we are. We have development plans. We actually have preliminary funding for improvements, significant improvements at the CAT facility. So having you see what we're trying to get done is also a piece of what ultimately needs to happen.
And that's part of this report is
is.
improvements to that. I do want to make a quick point. I mentioned this to Sam and Lloyd last week, but I really liked actually how the buses that were new went out without stickers yet, because then you could tell that they were the new buses. So you got to see like, hey, these are the ones that are out there. They are being added to the fleet. And so I thought that was, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I think it was a smart little marketing move.
Thank you.
He'll take it.
The other question, or one other question, relates kind of to the use of the downtown transit facility. One of the things that I was impressed with in going out to Champaign-Urbana was the notion that at their transit center, they had things, screens showing you when the next bus was due. And they actually appeared to be correct. And I'm wondering what it's going to take to get something like that. Because I'll tell you, the times I've tried to ride the CAT bus, more times than not, the bus has not been where it was supposed to be. The app hasn't told us when it was going to be there, even within a half an hour of accuracy. And that's one of the things that would really contribute to the rider's experience, to know that they have a way of knowing when it's going to be there.
Yes. So thank you for the observation. We share your concerns. We are working to, we have concerns about the software packages that we're using. We're assessing that now. The goal would be to submit a grant application in the coming year to change our software that allows us to be real-time as opposed to predictive, because that's what it is now. And because our schedules don't always align, if the bus isn't there, it'll show, because the schedule is printed behind the scenes. If the bus is running late, it's not picking that up. That's the predictive component.
Okay.
And it will disappear like it's supposed to be there, and all of a sudden you look at your app and say it's 2 minutes away and no bus is coming. That's because the schedule said it's supposed to be
Right.
there, but there's no bus. When we do real time, which basically we're turning each vehicle into almost like a cell phone, so it actually the system actually pings it, and you would actually see real time where it is. That is a little bit expensive, but I believe it's a component that we'll be able to get funded through the state once we do some other things, and
Right.
we're working through that now.
And then the last question I had is, to what extent in this planning process has anybody attempted to look, say, 5 years in advance to say, we've got all these places being built out 29 North, we should be doubling the service to 29 North? Or something similar like that is where your demand, you're basically saying this is where we know the demand will be, rather than waiting for it to show up.
I'm going to make sure I say this correctly. CAT as a city department can only basically highlight where we think it needs to happen. We have more control over potential service changes in the city, not the county.
Sure.
We have to have conversations with the county about, not that they have not been at the table, but making sure that everybody's on board about putting in service enhancements into the county as they expand their model. They have been at the table, so I will say they are a willing partner. We are talking. But it's not as if I can put it in, we're going to do it. They've got to fund it. So until that model changes, CAT is still has to come to the legislature, the legislative body
Us.
and them about funding where we go. We want to do more service. Every time we need to do more service, we need more vehicles and more bodies.
Sure.
And both groups have to share in that because the full freight of expanding service can't be on the city only.
Yep. Thank you.
That when it comes to anticipating future growth, that's a big benefit to this planning process. We looked at current land use, population, employment data, and projected out until 2040, I believe. So, we have that data mapped on where population growth is expected. So we have that mapped and documented in the report. So we're really trying to be proactive and not reactive. But when it comes to, provision of service in the county, what Garland said is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Lloyd, do you remember what the system was that provided the screen and the updates? Was it like a solar panel on a pole with a little screen, or was it something?
I was just looking at, we were in the transit center, and they had 3 bays of buses arriving, and each one had
at the
let's
actual
say,
transit
next bus
center.
from this route is due in 3 minutes, and it
Okay.
actually came in 3
Kind of like
minutes.
the metro.
Yeah.
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
Just give us a little time.
I wanted to check because I noticed a screen like that at an actual stop when I was visiting Lynchburg a while ago, and we talked about it at RTP. So it's like a solar panel on a pole with a screen that updates and it's live for where the.
Yeah.
And so I got that company name and we were talking about it, but something that. This is just some background for everyone who doesn't go to RTP. We would love to be able to coordinate with UTS and all the services so that you could have potentially one app that shows you where all the buses are instead of having to have one for UTS and one for CAT and all of that. So
Yep. Okay.
TBD.
Okay. So I just had kind of one comment, and because when I was doing planning for the county, and I was the one representing the county to expand transit in the county, and it was kind of cumbersome process that sounds like hasn't changed much. But one of the things that would happen during this process is that we would get all types of requests for people right now that are there would be SOVs, and they said, yeah, if you put it there, I would use it, and we would do it, or the city, because I was with the county, and of course they wouldn't. I mean, because it's because we talk about roads, we don't kind of go in this type of details. It's like VDOT will build the road, they will maintain it for life, and they pave it every few years, even if it doesn't need it. And so, what are we doing to make sure that we're expanding where it's needed, not where people say, if it's
Great question. So the study process that we just went through kind of hopefully ensures that we are getting it right. But also, it is our goal as an organization to not just put a shell of a service out, that when we put service out, it is done to a point where it would be useful for people to use it. Putting an hour service out is a Band-Aid. It's hard for people to use the service, and if I miss the service, I gotta wait another hour. So minimum standards of having a 30-minute service has the ability to entice people to try to use service. If you get beyond that, lesser, meaning 20-minute service or 15-minute service, now you have really robust service, which makes it really convenient for folks to use your service. We're not there yet. Building a standard to at least 30 minutes on every single route kind of is the first step. And then look at where the majority of our activity is happening first, turn those dials up, get 15-minute service or 20-minute service. And then we will see, I believe, our ridership model spike. And then that leads to other opportunities for us to potentially garner more state funding, which means we can actually add more service. So that's the goal.
Got it. Thank you, guys.
So the only thing I will say is the 17th, we will have a resolution that will come before you that allows you to basically adopt this plan or authorize this plan so we can get it to the state. So on the 17th, you will see that coming for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, sir. Pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code, I hereby move that City Council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 and A6 for 1, discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and 2, discussion and consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the city would be adversely affected, and 3, discussion and consideration of the eligibility of a prospective candidate for appointment to the Retirement Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay, motion passes. City Council is now in closed session. We'll return at 6:30, and for those that are following by Zoom, we will, there's a separate link for that, so see you again in about an hour.